What is up, everybody? Back again with another video. So let's dive right into it. This video is about my first job. So my first job was at a restaurant. I was a dishwasher slash a busboy, or yeah, you know the people that bring the dishes into the bus tubs, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it busboy, but some people are like, oh, it's busser, oh, it's plate collector, whatever, but I like to call it busboy. Let me know in the comments what you guys call it. That's question of the day right there. So anyway, like I said, I was a dishwasher for my first job, and this takes place summer of 2016. I had just finished 10th grade, going into 11th grade, and like I said in some previous videos, I went to a private school. So right there already, I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna see most of these motherfuckers till September or August, whenever my school started. So I kind of knew right there I wasn't gonna see most of my friends anyway. And I remember going up to some of my local friends that went to that school, and even people who went to my public school. And I was hitting them, I'm like, yo, like, we gotta do shit this summer, bro. Like, let's make the summer, like, the best summer ever. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them say to me, oh, I'm gonna be working this summer. I'm like, oh shit, where at? And it'd be various places for different people. They'd be, oh, my dad got me a gig at a body shop. Oh, I'm working at the grocery store. I'm working at McDonald's, whatever it was. So I was like, you know what? I need to get myself a job. So rewind maybe a couple weeks before the end of the year. I'm asking these people those questions I just mentioned, like, oh, we should do shit this summer, and like, oh no, I'm working. And I remember I applied to like mad places, like the same grocery store one of my friends was working at. I applied to like this flower shop, this local bowling alley that just opened up not too long ago. At the time in my town, I was like, oh, bro, like I want to be working. But then I remember I applied to this dishwasher job. As you can probably tell from what I've said so far, you guys already know which job I got. Which that was like my third choice. I really wanted to work at the flower shop since I like working outside. Which I know I wouldn't be outside completely at the flower shop, but I'd be like putting stuff in people's cars and stuff, and I'd be working out in the greenhouse, which is kind of outdoors if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, I get the job at the restaurant right when the school year ends, too. I remember I had orientation like 2 days after my last day of school. And I remember I went for the orientation, and I was actually very, very excited to start working again. Like some of my friends that weren't working that summer, like, dude, you're gonna miss it on so many plans, all that. And for a little bit, I was kind of like, yeah, I know, but like, I just want to work, all that. Since that was my ego, was to just get money. That's all I really cared about. Since, like I said, I had just turned 16 a few months before, and I was working on getting my permit, getting my license, all that good stuff. So I really wanted like this job, even though it wasn't my number one choice. And then fast forward to the orientation, it went all good and great. Like I was really, really happy. Like I said, I was extremely excited for it, and I remember it was mostly just training, which, you know, it's kind of obvious. You're just like washing dishes. You put it into that big ass dishwasher. There's not really much you have to learn, in my opinion, anyway. And then we get to the paperwork part, and this was awesome, bro. I remember they gave me like a shit ton of free food. They gave me like this whoopie pie thing, some cornbread, some biscuits, some meatloaf, some green beans, mac and cheese. Like there was a few other things too. Like they gave me like a shit ton of food. You guys can probably guess where I worked at that point. Let me know in the comments if you know, because come on, guys, I know y'all know. So after orientation ends, I start my original first day. And the first day, I think, like I had somebody like just show me how shit works, but halfway through that day, like they knew I knew how to do it. I even said to the guy, I'm like, dude, I know how to wash dishes. It's not hard. Like you're literally just putting them on the racks. You're giving them a quick hose down before you put them in the machine, and then you let them air dry. And then once they're air dried, the servers come grab it. Like it's common sense. Now I remember my first day that I was just talking about was like on a Wednesday or a Thursday, where not as many people go out to eat. And that day was easy. Like I remember I did some dishes and shit, but I was mainly just chewing on my phone with some of the other dishwashers. I was getting to know some of them. It was kind of nice actually. But then the weekend rolled around. I remember specifically this weekend, one of my boys who wasn't working that weekend since he was able to get himself a Monday through Friday, he was like, "Yo, I'm going to be at Six Flags of some of the boys, bro. You should come." I'm like, "Nah, dog. I gotta work, dude. Like 10 to 7 both days." And I was thinking of skipping right away. I remember my dad overheard me on the phone, and he was like, "Marston, you can't be skipping right away. At least you're working. Remember how much you said you wanted that money." And right there, I had instant regret getting this job. I was like, bro, like I'm gonna be out here hating my life. I already knew, like it wasn't rocket science. I know restaurants get busy on weekends. Like I've been to plenty of restaurants in my life. I already knew it was gonna be a nightmare. Like, dude, Six Flags sounds so much better. But regardless, I go to work both weekend days, and especially Sunday. Holy shit, fam, that was horrible. Like, I get there, like I say, 10 to 7, and the second I walk in, I see like two big ass piles of like platters and like plates and tiny little bowls and those little soda glass things, regular glasses, and I was like, dude, no freaking way. And I remember the servers whenever they needed something, or like what do you call it? A bus tub pull. That's what we'll call it. And what that is, it's basically when you have a bunch of bus tubs on like the rack of dirty dishes, and when they can't fit anymore, they go, "Oh, we need a bus tub pull, please." And I heard that like 30 times that day. Like, I was losing my shit. I was like, dude, like I'm trying my best. Like I'm trying to wash dishes, all that, but yet you guys keep coming up, which I understand though. Like they need room to put their shit on the rack so it's not on the floor where people can trip. And I remember it just kept picking up more and more and more. I'll never forget after that weekend, I told myself like, bro, I'm quitting. I'm quitting. I don't want to do this. But then I remember my parents were saying to me, "That's work, buddy. That's work." And yeah, they were absolutely right. That is work. 102%. It's work. And then it just repeated like all summer. Like I work a couple days during the week, both weekend days actually. I mean, couple weekend days is both weekend days. But yeah, I work both weekend days for the most part, and I work a couple weekdays, like I just said. So fast forward a few months to Thanksgiving. Actually, I remember tried to request it off. Like I was like, look, I'm going to my grandparents' house, and my grandparents only lived like 10 minutes from me, not even. And so they were pretty close to the restaurant. And I remember like I wrote like a request off note like a month in advance. And then I remember I showed it to my manager. I told him to his face. And I remember specifically, he like blinked both his eyes at me like 8 times. Like he was in shock. I was asking for that off. And I was like, yeah, dude, I need that off. Like I'm going to my grandparents' house, all that. I don't know if it went right through him. I don't know if, he just didn't know how to tell me no or what the deal was. But I remember I was put on the schedule, and I told my parents like I gotta work, and I was scheduled originally for a 9 to 5. I probably should have mentioned that first, which is basically all day. So I'd only get to have like dessert at my grandparents' crew, if that was the case. And then for whatever reason, I told my mom, look, I'll just have dessert with you guys. It's not that big of a deal. There's really no need to like, call them. But my mom decides to call them, and I'm fucking embarrassed. I'm like, why are you calling them? Now I look like the kid whose mom has to always, say something for him, whatever. But my mom still did it. And then my mom ended up arguing with my manager, who will just call Jim. And then Jim was like, okay, fine, fine, fine. We'll put him on for a night shift, but if he doesn't show up, we're going to fire him. I'm like, great, Mom. Now you have me on like a major hotspot here. And she's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, what the fuck ever. So I'm scheduled from like a 3 to 9 or a 4 to 9. I remember I went to my grandparents' house in my work uniform, and I had dinner with them. I talked to some of my family, and I don't drive at this time, like I said. So my dad says to me around 2:30, we should probably head on out. It's gonna be a bitch to park there, and boy was it. Like there was nowhere to park. This place was near like a shit ton of hotels. It was right off of our local highway too, and I remember me and my dad got there like 15 minutes early. I didn't want to go in that early. So my dad had to literally park in one of the hotels, and we just chatted for a bit. And I was telling him like, dude, this is gonna suck. And my dad's like, I know, but tell you what, at the end of the day, since you didn't get to have dessert with your family, how about I buy you some pumpkin pie or something from the restaurant after? So I was like, I bet. And it was funny. I walk in for my shift, everything seems normal, and the funny part here is that I met actually one of my close homies to this day. For the sake of the story, we're just gonna call him Logan. So yeah, I meet Logan, and it was the funniest thing ever how we first met. So I dropped the glasses, like the soda, beer glasses, whatever you want to call them, since I was kind of clumsy. I was just, okay, I'm gonna be real. I'm capping. I just wasn't really paying attention. I kind of just rushed it since I was so stressed. And my dumbass decides to just like rip it off like the top shelf rack it was on. It was weird. It was like slanted down, kind of. I don't know how the hell to describe it, but I remember I dropped the glasses and half of them break, and then Logan comes over, of course. Like he walks in for his shift, and he's like, "Dude, you're fucking stupid." That was the first thing he said to me, and I was like, "Who are you?" And then he introduces himself. I grab his snap. I remember that at that same time, I grab a couple other snaps. I'm not as close with a couple of the other people I met there, but I remember I grabbed their snaps, and we were closer quite a bit. It was actually not that bad of a day once, don't say it, like 7, 8 o'clock rolled around. It wasn't bad at all, actually. And then around 10 o'clock is when we were finally done, since we still had a shit ton of dishes to clean. And you can only clean so many dishes at once, and you gotta clean up all that shit. 10 o'clock rolls around. My dad's actually able to get a spot at the front of the restaurant. And then he comes in. I was like, oh, aren't we dipping? And he's like, oh, don't you remember? I'm getting you some pumpkin pie or whatever. So we sit down, and even though the restaurant's technically closed, one of my good friends who worked there, who we'll call Brady, decides to serve us up anyway. I'm like, dude, you're the absolute goat. You're a legend. I mean, my dad tipped him like $30. Like, it was awesome. My manager was cool with it too, since it was just me and my dad. And I even said, like, it's one dish. I'll clean it if I have to. But my manager, Jim, was like, hey, don't worry about it, bro. I got you. So now, here's the part where I quit. So about a year later, I think it was like October 2017, Logan had gotten a new job. My boy Quentin got a new job. My boy Nick got a new job. That Brady guy I just mentioned got a new job. Like, basically everybody who I worked with there got a job. And I'm not trying to be like, offensive or anything, but the remaining dishwashers didn't really speak English. It was kind of hard to understand them. Now, I'm not here to like offend y'all when it comes to that. I'm gonna reiterate that. Like, I don't mean that like an offensive way in any shape or form. I just can't understand what y'all are saying, so it's kind of hard when you guys are all speaking a different language and I don't know it. Like, I don't know if you're telling me to clean this, clean that. That's all I'm saying. Keep up the good work, though, guys. That's all I'm saying. So that's what made me quit, though. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. Like, they would yell at me in Portuguese or Spanish or whatever the hell they were speaking, which really, really pissed me off. So I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not doing this. This is stupid. And then I ended up just working at that local grocery store I wanted to work at originally. So yeah, that's the story of how I met one of my close homies and the story of my first job. Tell me about y'all's first jobs in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Let me know of any improvements I can make. That's going to be it for the first job video, guys. Take care, y'all. Peace.